Excuse me. Here we go. We are in my 1964 Ford Ranchero. I have spent a considerable amount of time wiring the whole vehicle, and I'm to the point where I need to figure out where to put my fuse box. In fact, I've got two fuse boxes, just like that. One will be key on, and the other will be a constant 12 volt power. So I have two just to make it really easy, but I need to figure out where I'm going to put these so that they're out of the way, because they're kind of ugly, and also extremely serviceable. So I think I'm going to put them inside of my glove box. And it's funny because a lot of these old cars had a glove box interior that's actually made of paper. After decades, it's a little distorted, but it's still in really good shape. I think this is still a usable piece. I'm going to be placing these fuse boxes on the inside of this box. And the thinking is I'm going to create a false bottom here so that it's nice and clean, but also all I have to do is remove that and have access to all the fuses. So I think the first step is to build that false bottom out of plywood. So I'm going to measure this box and then get to cutting. So this is the interior glove box, and we need to measure the inside dimensions of this so that we can cut some wood. The issue is, I don't know if you guys have ever tried to measure inside dimensions with a tape measure, but it's tricky, which is why I offer this tape measure. As you can see, it is a 10-foot tape measure, and it has a window on the top that actually gives you the inside dimensions, and it includes the width of this tape measure in that dimension. So for example, I'm going to measure the inside of this box. It's approximately 10 7/16 is that dimension. And you can see right here, this window is telling me it's 10 7/16, which is pretty cool. We can also measure the other direction, 5 inches wide. So we know 5 inches wide by, of course, I already forgot, 10 7/16. I got this piece cut out and I actually cut two. And as you can see, it fits in there nicely. It doesn't actually fix the warp. As you can see, it's got quite a warp on it. So what we need to do is glue this second piece on the bottom and clamp it down so that it sits flush. So that's what we'll do. Just using regular wood glue. And I picked up these little pieces here from Rockler a while ago, and they're really good glue spreaders. It's almost like tiling. You can quickly see if you have enough glue or not, which I don't. This rubber mat here, silicone I think, is also from Rockler. It's great because glue won't stick to it, and I like it because it keeps my workbench much cleaner. So yeah, Rockler. Not sponsored, but I do a lot of woodworking as well, and I find their tools to be pretty useful. Okay. I'm going to start on the corner that's already flat. Okay, you know you've done a good job when you start to see a little bit of squeeze out, and I'm getting squeeze out on all the edges. I'm just going to wipe off the excess with my finger, and we're good to go. And here's just a quick tip if you're using wood glue and these silicone tools. Don't try to wipe them off. It just makes it harder to clean. I'm literally just going to leave it here until it dries, and then I can just bend this and the glue will just separate from the silicone. So I'm done. I'm just going to set it down and let it dry. All right, so these are the two fuse boxes that I picked up. You can probably pick these up from Amazon, but I have two because one is going to be for all of the key-on accessories, and the other one will be a 12-volt constant. And I made each their own fuse panel just to make it easier for me, easier for if there is a next owner of this car, but makes it nice and simple when you separate the two. So, like I said, I just picked these up from Amazon. And I'm just going to quickly put these tops on to see how thick they are. And this is pretty much what it'll look like. And then we'll add a false bottom above. Once you look inside the glove box, you won't be able to see any of the wiring. So it keeps it nice and clean. So to get the depth of this floating shelf right, I measured the thickness of my fuse, added a little bit extra just for safety, and then I translated that measurement to a little compass. One is like a sharp point, the other is a piece of lead. And what I did was I took this and used this as a measurement and just scored all the way around the outside or the perimeter of this inside box. And then I marked it with just a little bit of white pencil so I could see it a little bit more. So now I have the dimensions all the way around this box, as you can see, for the depth of that floating shelf. So now I can actually measure that so that I know how big to cut my piece of plywood to create that floating shelf. So this is my compass set. I picked this up at like an antique store in Austin, Texas. You can find these pretty much at a lot of different antique shops. All of these tools come in really handy when you start to make your own parts or fabricate. In a pinch like this, where I'm trying to, measure an exact depth and then translate that to my floating shelf, this compass is the perfect tool to do that. So this is pretty cool. It comes with like a little capsule for extra leads. I'm gonna mess around with this a little bit just to make sure that my measurements are perfect. I went ahead and did that. And as you can see, those measurements aren't all the same. This isn't a perfect rectangle. So I wanted to make sure that I cut my piece of wood correctly. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna mark up a piece of plywood just a little bit bigger than all of these dimensions so that then I can, sand them down to fit perfectly. I'm not sure exactly yet how I'm going to finish the inside of this box. I could leave it as is. I could do what's called Mod Podge, which is it's almost like a wood glue, and you coat the whole thing and it just protects the inside a little bit more than this bare paper. I'm also thinking about using, it's almost like this. This is the case that my little compass came in, and it's almost like a leather. They used to wrap cameras in this stuff too. So I was thinking about putting that on the inside. I could also felt it or make it flock it, which is what a lot of people use for jewelry boxes. Point being, I'm not sure how I'm going to finish out this glove box, but I know that I want that floating shelf, so I'm just going to cut that out. So this is the floating shelf. I had to do some measuring to make sure, because this glove box kind of bows out a little bit and each corner has got its own dimensions, so it took me a little while to get this to fit. So the trick is to use this little hook to kind of hold it in place and get one lined up. And then the other one kind of falls in. So now I have a void right here that will house my two fuse panels. And while I was eating lunch, I thought about different ways of mounting this board, and I was looking at different type of ball and socket friction catches. But instead, I'm just going to stay really low tech and use cabinet magnets. So it's not going to have to hold a ton of weight, but with 2 of these, I think it's going to hold the amount of force to keep that lid in and not have it fall out. So I think that's what we're going to use to keep this in and to keep it right where we want it and not touching the fuses. So the next step, because I haven't figured out what I want to cover this with, I'm just going to move on to mounting these fuse blocks. Just a reminder, we've got some wood on the bottom, and that's going to allow the screws to bite when I start to screw these fuse blocks in. And now it's just a matter of placing them in a way that gives enough room for the wires and I don't have a giant mess. So I think that's about right. And I'm just going to screw them in. Fuse boxes are screwed in, but all of my screws are a little too long, as you can see. So I'm going to go ahead and cut those ends off so I don't hurt myself. We have a glove box. That's a fuse box. A glove box fuse box. That's pretty cool. Where we left off was I was thinking about ways of attaching this false front to the inside of this glove box, and I landed on magnetic cabinet catches, and I'll show you in a second, but basically all you have to do is put these little metal plates on the bottom of this false front, and then it will magnetize and stay put. The issue I'm having is that when I secure it, it still rocks back and forth like this. So I've temporarily added some wood blocks that actually prevent it from rocking. So that was like a proof of concept. Now I'm going to make that wood go all the way from one side to the other, make it look really nice inside there. Still haven't figured out how I'm going to line this. I'm thinking about all kinds of unique ways of making this look really nice, but I haven't figured that out yet. I got plenty to do in the meantime, so let's get cutting some wood. Pieces are cut. They fit nicely in there. Next we're going to use some contact cement, and you want to make sure you get the kind that is a permanent bond. Ask me why I know. But permanent bond, it should stick wood to this kind of fiberboard, so we're going to do that. This stuff dry, I sped up the process with the heat gun, and you just glue both sides, and once the glue is dry, Basically, it's not tacky anymore. You push those two pieces together with firm pressure and it's a permanent bond. If you have any real little issues, you can always put a little CA glue to like tack down some of the little spots just to help the whole process along, which is what I did in a couple spots. But as you can see, we've got two ledges and then two magnetic catches. We have the metal plates and it should just click in. Now we have a false front and we can upholster this or paint it, whatever we want to do. Today is an exciting day because for the very first time, I actually get to design something for this car. Up until this point, it's been all about fixing things, updating things. I've converted the suspension, added disc brakes, I've added fuel injection, computer controlled, all this stuff, right? But I haven't actually been able to design anything for this car that's creative. A little bit of my background, I was a designer for about 14 years in advertising, and this whole car has just been a process of updating it, modernizing it, making it safe. But now I actually get to apply some design principles to this car, and the very first step is this glove box. So I'm really excited today because my first design project for this car is making this glove box interior look a lot better. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to line the entire inside of this glove box in a really nice looking fabric that is actually designed by Tom Brown, and it's this beautiful green plaid. I'm gonna line the whole glove box with that material, and if all goes well, which it should, because I'm gonna do a couple practice runs, but it should look really nice once it's done. I'm also going to upholster this cover, give it a little bit of cushion so that it fits in there really nice and snug, but also kind of has some dimension. I went ahead and painted it with this black, which is actually a really cool black. It's made by Stuart Semple, and it is a black, but it is loaded with black pigment. So it's one of the blackest blacks that you can buy. It's also really cool because it is very matte finish. So as you can see, there's hardly any reflections going on. It's just basically, gone. But anyway, this is the bottom side. You can see these little metal plates. That's where it'll connect to the magnets. I think this foam is going to be too thick. So instead, I kept these sleeves. They're from moving, and you typically put like a wine glass in it or something. We're gonna try this instead, see if it is the right thickness. Yeah, I think that'll work better. A little less than double the thickness, but it creates just a little bit of cushion. I think it'll feel nice. So the first step in aligning this glove box is to create some patterns so that we can cut out the fabric precisely. That's what this is. As you can see, it fits really tightly on the inside. The better the template, the better the pattern. So I've made one for each of all four sides. And this one kind of folds. But we're going to take these patterns and lay them on some fabric, give ourselves about a 1/2 inch all the way around so that we can fold that fabric over, and we'll take it from there. I went ahead and converted these thin cardboard templates into something quite a bit thicker, which is this. And this is actually Ram board. You can buy a roll of it at Home Depot. It's RAM, and it's got a lot more structure. And I'm needing this because I'm actually going to use it to glue the fabric down, and this becomes almost like an insert that goes into the glove box. Speaking of which, the fabric that I chose is this, and it's a really nice tweed made by Tom Brown, and I picked it up at Mood Fabrics. If you're in LA, it's a great place to just wander around and find the perfect fabric for your needs. But yeah, so we're going to take this fabric, cut it out, giving yourself a lot of extra fabric for you to fold over and glue, and we'll take it from there. So off camera, I finished upholstering the other two sides, and this is what it looks like. But the actual false front with this extra thickness doesn't fit, so I have to trim all of this so that it fits nicely. So I'm going to do that on the router table. I just drew a little line here with Sharpie so you can see how much it's cutting off. Just a tiny fraction of amount of wood getting cut off. Plus the beauty of this is it's a really nice clean edge that's perfectly flat. So that's what we're gonna do to the actual shelf. This was a test. I think we'll move forward. So it's just a little bit of trimming. fits in there nicely, not too snug, so that when I wrap it in fabric, it'll still fit. Here's the glove box, fully upholstered. I don't have the false front in right now, but you can see that I've added some access holes for the wires to come in and out. And there's these magnets that hold the false front in place, and a small wooden lip here that holds the false front from rocking. I just had these temporarily zip tied just to make sure everything was fitting right, but I'm going to take these zip ties out and put it in the glove box. And anytime I get a chance, I try and replace the screws. It's a little thing, but when you have the opportunity to replace these with something like stainless steel, it just looks a lot nicer, especially if they're visible. So, stopped at True Value and picked up some screws.